Teacher, okay, who wrote fan is real all over the board? Me. You think you're badass? I'm reading fan smut. In public, in front of my family, in church, on Christmas Eve. Ew, why do you ship Fan? Phil is so ugly and Dan is so hot. Get your eyeballs checked because Phil is one of the most attractive men I have ever seen. Also, you need to learn that it is not okay to just like people for their looks. I don't know why you find it acceptable to put your 12.9-year-old and non-Dan girl hate in my ass, but it is not in any way, shape, or form okay. I don't even ship them as in I want them to have a poem about Fan. Fan is my OTP. Fan is my life. If you don't ship it, I'll stab you with a knife. AU, Fan finally comes out. One day. Maybe one day. I would honestly be weirded out if Fan were real. The reality of Dan and Phil just being friends is becoming more and more realistic. The chemistry is shrinking, and I can feel the ship crumbling. If they keep this up, I swear by 2016, no one will ship them. So, Fan is real. Am I right? Dan and Phil are gay and gay for each other. Now you might be thinking, okay, good for them, I guess. Such was my own internal monologue when I found out about their relationship reveal video. I thought I am unaffected by this information. I will go on with my day. I said I will do regular things like go on my favorite website, tumblr.com. Well, within the hour of them posting that video, Tumblr was completely unusable. My inbox flooded. My dash done for. Someone I was following, and I still don't know who they were to begin with, just fully rebranded as a fan, fully regressed to 2014 and rebranded as a fan account. The Tumblr users, they all said, strange, when is the fan video? Strange ÆONS fan video incoming. I'm so excited. Hello? Are we alive? Are we good? Are we fine? So excited for your upcoming Dan and Phil content. And I said, what the hell are you people talking about? All I care about right now is Dangerous Crowboy whose job it is to destroy plastic. What could I possibly have to say about Dan and Phil? But then like 2 weeks passed and I thought I forgot about this, but I think it was all just like sloshing around and digesting in my subconscious. And then I realized suddenly, heck, I do have things to say. So I finally watched the coming out video like 3 weeks late. It was really thought-provoking for me as someone who is really interested in YouTube and Tumblr and fan culture and the ways that the internet boils our brains. In addition to just my analysis, I wanted to make sure that I was accurately representing the experiences of Dan and Phil fans of this community, so I put out a post with some questions for them. I got hundreds of responses. I read all of them, so thank you so much to everyone who contributed to that post. I hope that this video does your fandom in all of its beauty and chaos justice. Dan and Phil fandom is called Fandom, by the way. Dan and Phil, ship name, fan, PH, fandom. It's gonna be super confusing when I'm speaking out loud, but we're gonna figure it out together, okay? The PH fandom is sometimes cited as the textbook example for why RPF, real person fanfiction, is bad. These two guys were just trying to live their lives, and they were stalked and tormented by unhinged Tumblr girls with no boundaries who were obsessed with creepy fanfiction about them because they objectify gay men. That's the narrative. Well, if it were that simple, we would not be here now, would we? I am the internet's amateur Tumblr historian. I am perhaps the internet's most prolific amateur Tumblr historian, and I speak for the creepy teenage girls of the world. So let's begin, shall we? But before we officially dive into it, a word from this video's sponsor, Raycon. A benevolent stork has delivered to my doorstep a pair of Raycon's essential open earbuds. These are designed to sit on top of your ear, letting you maintain total awareness of your surroundings while listening to the audio entertainment of your choice. If you're someone who needs to stay tuned into what's going on around you, traffic, coworkers, whatever, but you still want high quality sound in your ears, these are an excellent option. Personally, I like them just for wearing around my house. That way, if my partner or my cats are trying to get my attention and nobody has to scream at me over my headphones. They have multi-point connection, so you can connect to multiple devices and switch seamlessly without hassle. 36 hours of battery life, so you can go days without having to charge them. Raycon delivers the same premium audio quality as the bigger brands, but at half the price. Black Friday is coming up, so it is an excellent time to get yourself some snazzy new headphones, or you know I hate to bring it up in November, but it is sneaking on us. Get ahead on some of your holiday shopping. You can click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/strangeeonsopen for up to 30% off during Raycon's Black Friday and Cyber Monday sale. And now I return you to your regularly scheduled content. Phil starts making YouTube videos in 2006 on his channel Amazing Phil.
Hi, I'm Phil. Welcome to my video blog, which I hope you're very excited to be a part of.
Dan finds and enjoys his videos. He also begins following and interacting with Phil on social media, and the two become internet friends. Phil convinces Dan to start making videos, and he starts his channel Dan Is Not On Fire in 2009.
Hi. So, my name is Dan.
They meet for the first time in October of 2009 and film a video together called Phil Is Not On Fire, in which they draw cat whiskers on their faces and answer viewer-submitted questions. This was literally the day that they met. In 2011, Dan drops out of university to do YouTube full-time, and the two move in together. They are struck by the lightning bolt of trendiness, and their channels explode.
The great British vlogger boom of 2013.
Look at that.
Basically, social media happened. Facebook, Twitter, Insta, Tumblr, new users looking for content, and I just happened to already be there. Bam, 1 million subscribers. Now,
as you may have guessed from the opening of this video, I was never involved in PH fandom. I do remember watching them a very, very long time ago. Definitely over 10 years ago, since I considered myself a fan or a subscriber. What I remember is that they had a bunch of different channels dedicated to different types of content, and I was really only into Dan's main channel, Dan Is Not On Fire. And obviously I thought he was like really cool and relatable because every single online emo teen thought that in the 2010s. Once I got Tumblr, and yes, I was on YouTube even earlier than I was on Tumblr, I learned of the fandom, but I didn't really care to engage with it, even though I liked Dan and Phil. I never felt the call towards real person fandom. Yes, I have been known to post images of Gerard Way on Tumblr.com, but I know that I'm engaging with a stage persona with the art. I love My Chemical Romance, I love their style. I don't want to know about their real lives. I don't care. But I also think with traditional celebrities, it's a lot easier to make that separation between persona and private life, whereas it's not always been as easy to tell with YouTubers, especially not in the beginning. Dan and Phil are an ideal study on how YouTube fame as a concept came to be because they were there basically at the dawn of YouTube. I mean, so was I, but I was like 11, and thankfully I just microwaved my brain watching a lot of it and never posted anything.
I'm dangerous. I'm gonna do something bad. Stop talking yourself, you're like, blah, it's so annoying.
I'm making videos.
Guys, I would like 5 minutes, 10 minutes of quiet.
Early YouTube videos were not very elaborate. They were just people goofing around in their rooms. And there wasn't even artistic purple or red backlight. Can you imagine it? People didn't know what YouTube was yet. Like, the only predecessors to it were firstly Newgrounds, which was mainly known for like weird stick figure animations and flash games. A lot of that came over to YouTube in the beginning. And then there was more social media sites like LiveJournal and MySpace. So you also had people using YouTube more like a personal blog or a diary. The video and audio were shit, so people really had to rely on like their sense of humor, their personalities, their controversial opinions, their clickbait skills to draw in viewers. There wasn't an inkling that YouTube may one day compete with mainstream media as a form of entertainment. So often YouTubers' lives, their very selves, were their content. Now it's like every YouTube video thinks it's a documentary and needs to have like a drone shot and a bunch of weird filler stock footage and glitchy transitions. But the origin of YouTube, the heart of YouTube, is nerds goofing around in their bedrooms. And it was all nerds and weirdos. The perception at the time was like, ew, what do you mean you talk to a camera by yourself and you post it online, you weird basement dweller? It's 2009, go grind to Usher at the club or whatever we do. I was like 11. No one thought that YouTubers would be considered cool or famous or successful one day. So there was no power dynamic between them and their followers. YouTubers were losers. Their viewers were losers. Everyone was just posting on the internet together, and there wasn't this dynamic of like celebrity and their fans. But obviously YouTube turned out to be extremely popular. It turned out that people could get hundreds of thousands and even millions of subscribers, and making silly videos about your life could become your full-time job. And that relationship evolved into something more like celebrity and fans, except on the internet, where everyone has constant access to each other. Everyone was just figuring it out. It was this glorious golden age of bad posting. We were granted real-time access to celebrities' thoughts for the first time. And it was shit like, got in yesterday, spilt a full tub of pasta on the floor. Stupid, stupid, stupid boy, smelly pasta house. But even though social media is stupid, It's addictive. People started to crave that 24/7 connection. They posted about what they ate, who they hung out with, their every dumb fleeting idea, and past a disaster. Moments that otherwise would have been private. And a lot of traditional celebrities knew when to set boundaries, knew how things can go bad if your fans have too much access to you. But YouTube was a new type of fame, and it was specifically built on these online connections. So many early YouTubers embraced the social media panopticon wholeheartedly because that parasocial connection was what made them in the first place. So how could it be bad? The internet was awesome, and the internet was the future. What could possibly go wrong? And then, for some crazy reason, around like 2014 to 2016, everybody started posting videos called like, burnout, I need a break, YouTube burnout, YouTube is bad for my mental health. Yeah, because you're posting 7 videos a week and tweeting your location on the hour. Jesus Christ! It was exhausting. Nobody understood boundaries, YouTubers overshared a lot, and fans didn't see YouTube as art and performance, but as a genuine, authentic window into other people's lives. Some, typically those who were really young or really lonely, or both, even thought of YouTubers like their real friends. It didn't even occur to them that there really could be boundaries. A delightful relic that highlights this is this post by Tumblr user Shercock Holmes casually inquiring, does anyone know Dan and Phil's address? And Dan responds, okay, no offense, but your stalking skills could do with a little more finesse. I have a feeling the kid who posted this didn't even know it was weird, didn't see it any differently from knowing where their real friends live. Like I said, I grew up on this era of YouTube. So when my own channel started getting big in 2018, I had a set of obvious ground rules in the back of my head that I didn't even need to think about. Like, don't film outside your windows or on the street that you live on. Don't attract too much attention to your relationship. It's an easy way to get attention on the internet. Strange eons, hot lesbian clickbait. But I don't want that kind of attention. I don't want strangers assuming they know anything about my relationship. Do not start beef or engage with drama no matter how annoying people are, because it never turns out well. Onision is such low-hanging fruit though that he doesn't even really count. And just generally don't be messy. But I know that those ground rules are necessary for me to get through YouTube in a healthy way, because I spent my formative years bearing witness to the trial by fire that the original YouTubers like Dan and Phil got. YouTube fame was a weird accident that nobody prepared for, and that made it quite the conundrum to negotiate how much familiarity a YouTuber should or even safely can have with their audience. 2012 to 2015 is usually referred to as the golden age of the fandom. GIF sets, edits, memes, compilation videos, fanfiction, imagines, fan art, all flourished during this time. This is the most views I have literally ever seen on a Wattpad fanfiction. And it's copyright? I mean, I guess it... What is the situation with RPF copyright? You know what? That is a rabbit hole that is not for now. We're putting that away. That's a rabbit hole that's not for now. Having to live with Phil and Phil's dad, who was gone half the time, Dan and Phil get to know each other quite well. They soon bond over many things, and Dan realizes he has feelings for Phil. But will Phil feel the same way? Or will Dan find someone else through the ups and downs? Okay, but imagine Dan doing a live show and someone asks him if he's a good kisser, and he just turns to the door and yells, "Hey Phil, am I a good kisser?" And Phil comes in and kisses him really softly and says yes. And Dan moves on to the next question, and that's it, that's how they come out. Daniel has anxiety and crumples paper to calm himself down. Phil has ADHD and diminishes hearts to bring himself up. Prison, Dan and Phil imagine. We need to talk about what happened back there. Dan panted, and you shook your head. Just drive, you say, shaking, pale hands gripping the dashboard, and you swallowed hard. What? Just drive, you shout, and he quickly fumbles with the car keys and started the car. What did you do? Dan whispered. Shit, your name. What the fuck did you do? He shouted and grabbed the window roller and rolled down the window. We did it together, you say calmly, and he looks at you. We need to get out of here, you say. We need to get the train out of here. Nobody can find us, you say, tapping your fingernails on the door. Oh my god, he's dead, Dan says, the realization kicking in. Phil's dead, your name! It was your fault too, you shout, and he laughs. I don't think I was the one taking a hammer to his head. Dan, oh my god, I didn't mean for it to go this way, you shout. I fucking loved him. You put your head in your hands and let the tears fall. You need help, he growled.
We have accepted our purpose on this earth is to be prompts for art and fiction, all right? Yes. And the moment we don't go along with what you've had in your head, you get angry at us for ruining your fun. Thanks, everyone.
Why are you crying?
They might be pissing, Phil. It could be stress piss.
If you were so inclined, you could lose hours watching YouTube compilations of Dan and Phil cutest moments, or scrolling Tumblr looking at gift sets and flower crown edits. And that's what fandom is a lot of the time. Taking your special little guys and putting them into different hats and putting them into situations, playing with them like dolls. The internet makes it so easy to boil your brain in an endless stream of differently distorted versions of them. Honestly, I think Dan himself said it pretty well in 2012.
Firstly, the person discovers and enjoys the thing. Then the person goes onto the internet and has fun finding out more about it and people who feel the same way. Person then suddenly becomes aware of their overwhelming perfection and becomes the main reason for being alive. Now, whenever anything happens, they are overcome by so many emotions that they can't function, and it's basically destroyed their life. But what is it that turns you from a person who just likes something into this emotional wreck? It's the internet.
The hub of fandom was, of course, Tumblr. The user base of Tumblr at that time was known to be young, notably even younger than other social media platforms. And because it revolved so heavily around fandom and community, a lot of those young users were the kids who felt like nerds and outcasts, who were some variety of queer. Dan and Phil fit perfectly into the canon of Tumblr interests at the time. I mean, just look at them. It's like somebody made them in a lab to be crack cocaine for 2014 Tumblr girls. They have the alternative aesthetic. They're British. They're that specific type of skinny androgynous white guy that we associate with the trope of the Tumblr sexy man. And there were two of them. They were shippable men. They had a delightful dynamic and chemistry, and Tumblr has shipped men for far less. Tumblr has shipped men for nothing. Tumblr has shipped men for negative benefit to the world and the internet. The popularity of male-male ships with women and queer people who aren't cis gay men it's a whole other video, and I've already made it. Arguably, it was two whole other videos, but TLDR, the male-male ship is a space in which to explore romance that can be free from misogyny and gender roles. The sexuality that is explored in this kind of fanfiction isn't the sexuality of real gay men. It is the sexuality of women and queer people wearing the mask of the male body, especially the cis white male body, because it is free from a lot of the baggage that they don't want to bring into their escapist fiction. Dan and Phil already had that sort of androgynous quality and gender equality between them, making them the perfect canvas for fanfiction writers to project their desires onto. So what I'm saying is they had the same kind of appeal as a lot of fictional characters and fictional worlds that Tumblr was into. But the plot twist, they're real. They're more than just characters. They are real guys. And they were also on Tumblr and into fandom, and they talked about emo bands and anime and struggles with mental health and bullying and about the magic of the internet to connect you with weirdos like you. It was as if these characters who fulfill all of your favorite tropes could also talk directly to you and shared many of your interests and struggles, and like they were Tumblr's absolute perfect golden boys. For a lot of kids who stumbled upon their videos, it was a huge deal to see adults who were like them, who were nerdy and who were socially awkward, who were pretty clearly queer even if they weren't talking about it at the time, but they were also funny and lovable. They were loved by their audience and by each other, and that, to a young outcast, is evidence that those weird parts of yourself might be lovable too, and that it might be okay someday. Some respondents to my fandom survey said, "This was 2012. The hopes and dreams of young Tumblr residents were on fucking John Locke. Of course people were looking for queer joy, queer role models, positive representation in a media environment that didn't have much to offer. They represented in my head adult gay people who were capable of being happy. It was more than a book/piece of fictional media because I could see it being real. I was really disconnected from queer people IRL, and this was a way for me to imagine a future for myself." Even during the fandom heyday, they never looked down on their audience for being teenage girls. Or quote-unquote girls at the time, lol. It's a joke about how a lot of Dan and Phil fans ended up being trans, so when we say, like, teenage girl fan base, yeah, 10 years ago, but now it's a little more diverse. They've always been celebratory of their audience, and I've seen other male content creators get uncomfortable or angry at the fact that their audience mostly consisted of teen girls. Oh yeah, oh boy, the creators of a lot of extremely popular, Tumblr popular shows, Sherlock, Supernatural, they hated us. They hated us. They made whole episodes of our favorite shows to mock us. It was crazy. Again, whole other video that I've already made. If you had the choice on 2014 Tumblr to stake your mental health and well-being on either the Supernatural boys finally turning out to be queer, or Dan and Phil, it's pretty clear which was the healthier choice both then and now. But it's a complex thing, you know, to hold two versions of someone in your head. A real person, a stranger whose creative work you respect, and your stinky blorbo who you can chew on like a dog toy and put in a situation. I think most RPF creators would be mortified for their stuff to ever be seen by the subjects. Most people playing with Dan and Phil like dolls and using the idea of them to play out their personal fantasies, I think felt some level of shame and cognitive dissonance about that, or at least had no desire for the real Dan and Phil to ever engage with those things or fulfill those fantasies. Former Tumblr user Dan Dongs and her situation was one of the more shattering moments in fandom. She was an artist that made primarily not safe for work BDSM fan art of Dan. She always publicly said that if either of them ever found out about her blog, she would deactivate. She practically begged people not to submit any of her content their way when they would collect posts / art / whatever to react to, but someone submitted her art of Dan and it made it into one of their Dan and Phil react to Tumblr videos, and she deactivated the same day. There could be a lot of discourse in fandom. It did have a reputation for being kind of toxic, being one of those fandoms you quote-unquote don't want to mess with because frothing, obsessed 13-year-olds who give themselves heart palpitations looking at photoshopped pictures alone in their rooms will eat you for saying anything that they don't like about their precious British cinnamon roll internet boys. But like, the way I see it, yeah, there was a lot of discourse in fandom because these kids were grappling with genuine ethical dilemmas about how to navigate parasocial relationships respectfully. What sort of fan creations are okay when you're dealing with real people? Is the mere existence of something a problem, or does it only become a problem if you try and show it to the people who you're depicting? And of course, the biggest question of all, to ship or not to ship, to believe or not to believe. All fans were called PH fans, but Dan and Phil shippers were specifically called fannies. Those against them, anti-fannies or fanties. That's a word that had to come out of my mouth. I was in the trenches, cat whiskers, fanfic and all. I remember spending quite a while online defending the two of them from fans projecting their ship onto them, especially because at that point they'd requested a level of respect and privacy away from the shipping. I indulged in fandom discourse, insisting that it's weird to speculate on their sexuality and projecting your ship onto real people. And then there were people who just hated the whole fandom. There were blogs dedicated to complaints and gossip about fans, really leaning into the idea that fans were all disrespectful and delusional teens, and that Dan and Phil probably hated them. And some even came out with the take that Dan and Phil were probably just queerbaiting their idiot fans to get rich on YouTube views and the whole thing was rotten from both sides. And wow, okay, that's a really grim thing to think. But as if all of this isn't already enough. Some people took it farther than just shipping Dan and Phil as if they were fictional characters. Because they're not fictional, they're real boys, and their relationship could also be real. And the things that fannies fantasized about could be happening for real the moment the cameras were turned off, and that idea drove people crazy. A subset of fans became obsessed with proving that Dan and Phil ship name Fan is real. Videos were scrutinized obsessively for any interaction between the two of them that might possibly be construed as romantic. Evidence was compiled, analyzed. Every instance of them sharing clothes, and in one case underwear, is documented. People were obsessed with their sleeping habits. They had 2 bedrooms in their shared apartment, but that had to be a front, right? Which bed was the real one? The sheets aren't crinkled enough. Fake bed. Dan says he sleeps with a fan beside his bed, and what is it doing beside Phil's bed in this background of this one shot? Hashtag fan proof. Hashtag fan is real. Their friend talked about going to a wedding in May. Phil has a calendar open to May in the background of one of his videos. The two of them recently went to a bakery to buy cookies. Likely story. How about wedding cake shopping? They must have got secretly married at least like 4 times. People archived a ton of personal stuff they posted pre-YouTube fame that they had never expected others to see. There are detailed timelines chronicling everything they've ever publicly done together, all the way back to their Twitter interactions in 2009 before they'd even met and were just flirting online. And then, of course, there was the doxing, just regular original flavor doxing, people finding out where they lived and stalking them there. I do remember my middle school best friend finding their exact apartment by analyzing every single shot that showed the view out of their windows, which even at the time I thought was really creepy and unsettling. Pretty sure I emailed them in a state of severe distress to warn them to be more careful because a random 13-year-old in California found their address. No clue if that email ever reached them, but I'm pretty sure they were well aware by then how insane the fans were. We've seen similar conspiratorial thinking arise in other fandoms, like the Gaylor conspiracy that Taylor Swift is secretly a lesbian, or Larry Stylinson that Harry and Louis One Direction are secretly together. Even the John Locke conspiracy, I think, is worth mentioning in this context, even though that one is about a fictional show. It was a big Tumblr thing that was happening around the same time as the fandom Golden Age, PH fandom. Golden Age. So I think maybe there could have been some cultural exchange between those fandoms. But with the John Locke conspiracy, people were really only hurting themselves. The consequences are different when it's about real people.
Sometimes it seems like you're just there to be a Sims family, playing house. The journey of your channel isn't about growing your creative style, it's playing the game of life in public.
Me trying to deny it was getting in the way of their fun.
Yeah.
They wanted nothing more than for fan to be real, and me saying no meant that it was like I was some evil showrunner that was stopping their favorite character from having the gay storyline that they wanted. Except I'm not the writer of the Dan show. I am literally Dan! Hello?
Shockingly, Dan and Phil have never appreciated people treating their life like a TV show or like an ARG where everything is a clue that has to be decoded. And I think we can all agree that that stuff is crossing a line. So where then does that leave all the creepy fan fiction? Surely if Dan and Phil have had so many problems with their fans and boundaries over the years, the fan fiction is part of the problem. Except, no. Literally not at all. The idea that RPF, shipping, and fandom culture were the problem, were what traumatized them, is a complete misunderstanding of the situation. In fact, they love it. They have always been enthusiastically supportive of fanfiction and fan creations about them of all kinds. They recognize that it's a product of the natural human urge to tell stories, and it's creative expression, and it's awesome. Even if it's hand-drawn bondage porn of them, they seriously said, go nuts, show nuts. And I think it's probably because they're also fans and nerds who have had positive experiences in fandom, and they genuinely get it. They wrote fanfiction about each other as part of their book in 2015.
The Urge, a Dan and Phil fanfiction by Dan Howell. It was a crisp winter's night in London, England.
Last year, Tumblr had an RPF ship tournament, and they're extremely amused by the fact that the final round was them versus Jesus and Judas, and they won. There's even a handful of infamous crack fics in the fandom that have these scenes that are just super gross and shocking on purpose, and like people force each other to read them, and it's typical middle school activity, typical middle school bonding, really. Who here has not forced their friends to read the craziest fanfiction they've ever seen? Dan and Phil reacted to one of these fanfictions in a video and have demonstrated knowledge of others that are just absolutely infamous for being the worst thing you could possibly write.
Dan pecks his lips but diverts his attention to a strip of skin peeling from Phil's neck. Phil closes his eyes as Dan takes the end of it between his teeth and pulls it away fluidly.
Part of what has earned them such a dedicated fan base is that they don't just go out of their way to interact with their fandom. They are active participants in it. They're in on our jokes, they use our memes, they know all of the fan theories and poke fun at them in a playful way. It's all fine, as long as you respect their privacy. And even though a subset of fans crossed that line, I think the vast majority did respect Dan and Phil as people and did respect their privacy. And my argument for that involves bringing up something that was really taboo to ever speak about in fandom until literally a month ago when Dan and Phil brought it up in their relationship reveal video. And that is the Valentine's Day video. So in 2011, a YouTube glitch made a bunch of private videos public by accident. And this included a Valentine's Day video that Phil had made for Dan in 2010. The two were absolutely mortified to see something so personal circulate among their fans, and for the truth about their relationship to be revealed in a way that they had no control over. They did everything they could to keep the video from spreading around. But, you know, they said it themselves, the Streisand effect. If you don't want something talked about and you make it known you don't want it known, everyone's gonna spread it a billion times faster. So the fact that they didn't want this video shared should not have stopped it from being spread around, but it kind of did. I was baffled, boggled to learn about the existence of the Valentine's Day video, because then why did we have years of people obsessing over their arms touching and hallucinating wedding plans and analyzing bed sheets if we had this? Why was there fandom infighting about whether or not they were gay or whether or not they were together when any argument presumably could have been won just by showing people this video? If proof of their relationship has been out there since 2011, why the hell did that remain relatively niche fandom knowledge. The answer is, their fans didn't see them as objects or as fictional characters, and that invading of their privacy always made people uncomfortable. I was on the outskirts of the fandom in general, but I've seen the Valentine's Day video when I was in middle school. I kept it close to my chest because it felt like I accidentally invaded on something very private. I think it was just because of the feeling of like I accidentally pried into something I shouldn't have made me feel sick. I remember being in algebra class one day, where I sat beside my friend who was so big into fans she basically made it her entire personality, and she tried desperately to show me her phone recording of a screen recording of a re-upload of the Valentine's video, and I was just refusing to look at it because I felt like it was a huge invasion of their privacy. Obviously, zero leaking of their personal videos is the ideal amount. It's bad that the Valentine's Day video leaked at all. That sucked. But I am astounded genuinely by the fandom's ability to keep it contained and to foster a taboo about talking about it. People told me that every few years it would resurface and people would shut it down entirely. And the kind of people who tried to post it were considered trash by most of the fandom. Eventually, all of the more stalkery materials were marginalized in the same way. Infamous Tumblr archives of private material about Dan and Phil were made private, so you'd have to know someone or get in with certain circles of people to get the passwords, or sometimes it was Google Docs that were privately circulated. People would make password-protected accounts for access to deleted, unlisted, and generally stalkery Dan and Phil material, acted all mysterious about it like they were selling drugs or something. One doc was literally called the drug deal. This was critiqued by most of the fandom at the time, and luckily died out around 2018. I came across a literal 80-page Google Doc of quote-unquote fan proof, and being a young and in the closet shipper myself, yes, I read the whole damn thing. I did not reblog it or otherwise interact, but stuff like this circulating and being easily accessible was part of the problem. By 2016 or so, the fandom was very self-policing. I remember reading a lot of Tumblr discourse about keeping the Valentine's Day video out of circulation, etc., etc. Point is, this kind of thing was not considered normal or okay. Skin-eating kink? Yes. Leaked private videos? No. Honestly, really clear and fair boundaries. 2018 to 2023 were dark days in the fandom. The hiatus.
Hiatus.
Dan explains in his Why I Quit YouTube video that the main reason for this was that he just needed a break. YouTube is a hell job seemingly designed to break you psychologically. And you know, that's true. Something is wrong with me, but I am a cockroach and I scuttle on. So, Dan took a massive step back from making videos, but the hiatus wasn't a full-on, disappearance from the internet. It was mostly just a break from Dan and Phil making videos together. They also explained in the recent video where they revealed their relationship that it could be extremely discouraging to put effort into something and have the entire comment section be, "Oh my god, they touched arms at 12:47!" Dan especially didn't want the value of his creative work and entire being, in fact, to be reduced to their relationship. But it was during the fan hiatus in 2019 that Dan made basically I'm Gay, the coming out video where he opened up about the traumatic bullying that made accepting himself extremely difficult.
The world was clearly telling me if I ever wanted to be accepted by anyone, or in my particular environment, survive, I couldn't be gay. I was afraid of it, literally homophobic of myself.
He says that when the fandom started theorizing about his sexuality, compiling their evidence and making their conspiracy boards, really aggressively trying to prove it, it was a huge PTSD trigger for him, and it made it even more difficult for him to come out. Pressuring people to come out or speculating about their sexuality, even if you end up being right, it's not about being right, okay? It's always a dick move. In the 2019 coming out video, he also says some explicitly romantic sounding things about Phil.
And obviously we were more than friends, but it was more than just romantic. This is someone that genuinely liked me. I trusted them, and for the first time since I was a tiny child, I actually felt safe.
I remember hearing about this through the Tumblr grapevine, and that was when I was like, oh, okay. So, no, Dan and Phil, those big YouTubers I used to watch a bit 10 years ago, they were in a relationship. Okay, cool. So that's why when the new video dropped confirming their relationship, I was like, what? I thought we knew about that since 2019? But once again, that was an outsider's ignorance, okay? I was not in the fan trenches. I was not living The kind of questions that people who really followed them were, did they start as friends and get together later? Did they hook up in the beginning and then agree to just be best friends forever later? And they were together before, but not anymore. Or did they break up during the hiatus and then get back together? Were they secretly married in Japan in 2015? When the hiatus ended in 2023, it was a new era of Dan and Phil. They had done a lot of growing up. They were more comfortable with themselves than ever before. They were making crazier, gayer stuff than ever before. And the queer kids, who had based their whole personalities on Dan and Phil and Tumblr in middle school, had also grown up. Most fans will say that around this time, they really stopped hiding their relationship. I am in awe of Dan and Phil's ability to not only never cross the line of an outright confirmation of their relationship status, but then pick up said line, move it further along, and not cross it again. That the first post-hiatus years were something of a soft launch of their relationship, which is why the recent video is referred to in fandom as the fan hard launch. They teased it and they clickbaited it so much that when they finally posted the hard launch video, like, look at this. Like, it doesn't even look out of place among so many other videos that they made. But this was actually it, okay? Not a drill, actually it. They revealed that they have been together for 16 years since that day in 2009.
Dan and Phil, was it always gay?
Yep. The whole time.
Fan is real. The shackles are loose. Fans are free to just acknowledge that now without sounding like they need a whole conspiracy board backing them up and disclaimers about whether it's respectful, and it's just out in the open now. How does it contextualize this fandom's over a decade history with this secret? Like I said, when the hard launch video came out, Tumblr became unusable for a day. Most people who are on Tumblr today have been on there for a very, very long time, and once in a while something happens that just rips all the history back out of its grave and forces us to reckon with who we were in 2014. And Dan and Phil coming out was one of those things. Hearing them speak about how difficult the stalking and the invasions of privacy were for them, especially given Dan's particular type of trauma, it made a lot of people go, oh god, I participated in that. I remember seeing the Valentine's Day video, or I remember leaving annoying comments about them touching arms and sharing clothes. I remember posting about how, oh my god, obviously they're totally together and they should just come out already. So here's my main take on the fandom that I don't know if outsiders know. We are absolutely fucking guilt-ridden. I've seen that others have commented very eloquently on the topic here already, but what I want to add is that I'm pretty sure Dan and Phil know this as well. And that's why forgiveness and letting go of shame are such strong motifs in their recent content. Obviously, it's tongue-in-cheek and coated in a healthy layer of comedy when they dress up as a nun and a priest and absolve us of our sins, but it is also addressing a real issue in the fandom. And that is why reactions like, so what, Dan and Phil are gay, didn't we already know that, are not helpful. The point is not that we know. I think most of their fans knew on some level. The point is that reconciliation. Dan and Phil, first YouTubers ever in history to make and publish an official forgiving video instead of an apology one. Pioneers at everything, setting trends from 2009. You gotta love them. It's been really hard to juggle the truths of these people were really important to my acceptance of myself, and sometimes I crossed a line in looking for myself in strangers. And the actions of myself and those similar to me were capable of causing harm / did harm to people we looked up to. Watching their coming out video and hearing them forgive their audience, myself included, made me emotional. That's a forgiveness I felt I didn't earn or deserve, and still received it regardless. Dan and Phil were a really tough lesson that shaped my views on parasocial relationships in my online life. I wish I could have learned it without having participated in something that hurt them. Getting the confirmation that fan is in fact real feels like when a cat lets you pet its tummy for the first time. Whether you knew there was a tummy isn't important, it's about being trusted with it. It's been really interesting to see how Dan and Phil conceptualize their relationship with their fandom now. You know, they went from being nobodies with cameras to being sort of famous, but totally not real famous or subject to the usual hazards of fame, totally not at all, to being the center of Tumblr fandom, the unique type of fandom that is Tumblr fandom, and yet they don't see parasocial relationships as a one-way thing that they are the victim of. Their fame is an ever-evolving, layered conversation.
I feel like we've been a bit harsh on the audience so far. Have we though? Well, if they're being a bit unhinged, whose job was it to raise them?
Their legal guardians.
No, ours.
Oh, sorry, was it our job to raise you? Sorry, we must have missed the memo. All right.
Well, if someone spends thousands of hours watching Dan and Phil on YouTube and they turn out a bit feral, I think we are at least partly to blame.
And this is what keeps us awake at night, all right? Look, we never asked to be role models, but whether we like it or not, we absolutely were. When we first posted Phil Isn't on Fire, we did not expect that an entire generation of young people would base their whole personalities on us. Jesus Christ.
No, I mean, Dan, if you picture in your head the influence of Dan and Phil,
Yep.
what are you thinking of?
I picture somebody that went to school with cat whiskers on their face, and then somebody put them in the bin.
They engage with their fandom, and some of the weirdest fan practices on a level I have never seen from creators that big. I feel like when we talk about parasocial relationships, it's often about how they're bad. Influencers are soulless monsters who are manipulating you for clicks, and they don't care about you, and you're an idiot for caring about them. And also crazy. Look what crazy parasocial fans did to Dan and Phil, after all. But, like, that's not it. That's not true. Like, yes, there are YouTubers who see their audience as engagement and ultimately money. And yes, there are fans who overstep boundaries. But the truth is that if we choose to, we can matter to each other across this internet, even if we don't really know each other. I have been on YouTube for 8 years now, which is only half as long as Dan and Phil, and I'm obviously not nearly the level of famous that they are. But I have now been here long enough to see queer kids who used to watch my videos alone in their rooms grow up. I have had the immense privilege to get to meet some of them, and what I have learned is that when you put a genuine piece of yourself out there onto the internet, you inevitably collect people who are the same kind of weird as you. I feel less alone too as a result of all of this. And I guess it's just cool to see Dan and Phil, after all of these years and this insanity, still thinking about it in the same way, even though YouTube has become a completely different monster from what it was when they started. You know, they still feel like a piece of what YouTube originally was, of the good internet. So there you go, I made the fan video. Are you happy, or are you gonna go laugh at me over on tumblr.com because you were all right and I made the fan video? That's it though, that's the end of the fan video. That's what I have to say. Notoriously bad at it. Didn't I just say I'd been on YouTube for 8 years and I'm still like just absolutely the worst at ending a video ever? I don't know, bye. See you next whenever. Like 2 weeks from now-ish is like vaguely my video schedule right now that my non-existent watch tells me.